Your first 100. This is such an interesting and almost nerve-wracking phase for almost every entrepreneur that I've spoken to. So you've got your product, you've got your launch checklist, you've done everything. You know in theory, this is how you're going to get your product onto the market. But getting your first 100, really your 1,000, but let's start with your first 100 users, is the most crucial part of this journey. The reason we want to focus on the first 100 is because this is where the rubber hits the road. You are going to have actual paying customers who are going to tell you whether they like your product or they just don't. And this feedback from your first 100 is going to shape what your product will actually look like over time. So listen, as much of research as we've done, really talking to as many customers as is humanly possible at this point is the most important thing you can do now as a founder, as a product manager, as really anyone on this team. You want to quickly start looking at signals that will determine whether the product is working, the features are resonating, whether there are bugs, whether there are just fundamental issues with how your product is being positioned, branded, marketed, and getting in the hands of users, and whether they are able to ultimately solve the problem that they came to you for in the first place using your product. If your product is introducing friction, if it's introducing more hurdles for them to accomplish, what they're trying to accomplish, you need to really pull back and assess that feedback, incorporate and iterate. Great, you know all these things and we've already talked about all this. So coming back to how do you get to those first 100 customers? How do you do that? You already know who your target customers are, you know what markets they are operating in, and you are armed with how your product is valuable or different from how your competitors are solving this problem. Now with this information in hand, here are some helpful tips to get you in front of your first 100 users. First one, create a list of all the possible sites or forums where your possible users are actually hanging out and maybe even seeking feedback, information, guidance from others on that forum to solve a certain problem. Facebook communities, Reddit groups, subreddit groups, Quora, Slack channels. There's lots of communities like these where people actually hang out, seek support from the rest of the network, and this is a valuable place for you to know how your users are thinking about their problem and whether your product is actually helping solve that problem. If your product does address some of their problems, now's the right time to engage, and engage in a valuable way. Don't engage as the founder who's trying to pitch your product. Really build relationships with the people on these channels. Offer value. You are someone who's thought about this problem a ton. You've gone on to solve the problem with tech. You must have so many insights that can help you aid these conversations and genuinely be of help to these users on these forums. Developing that relationship helps you bring them into your trust circle, and then you can start to offer your product as a way to solve the problem. Second, don't be afraid to ask for help. There's a ton of entrepreneurs just like yourself who are currently in this situation or who've just moved past this into the next phase. Reach out via emails, LinkedIn DMs, and so on to ask for advice and ask for introductions. There's a really good possibility that there are synergies between your product and some other entrepreneur's audience. Look for ways to get access to the relationships they've already cultivated so that you have a warm introduction to their customers. Number 3, as part of your A/B tests, try to incorporate a funnel where you capture users' first name, last name, email, possibly phone number. Because this now gets you a way to go back to them and ask them why they dropped off, whether they continued on, and so on. Users typically don't offer feedback on their own, so try and get to them while you have them on your platform.